Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, where we celebrate filmmaking, storytelling and cinema across the island of Ireland. So if this is your first time listening in, make sure you subscribe and listen back to our extensive back catalogue where we chat to creative voices from across the industry. And in today's podcast, we are delighted to partner with the National Talent Academy of Film and TV Drama, which is an initiative of Fís Éireann, Screen Ireland, managed by Ardán. And today we are speaking with 4 of their talented filmmakers funded under the short film schemes who are about to have their world premiere at the Dublin International Film Festival on the 20th of February. So for all you filmmakers out there, just to note, the National Talent Academy's First Credits Scheme deadline is on the 6th of March, and to apply you have to have attended one of their information sessions. So there's ones coming up on the 15th and the 25th. If you would like to apply for this, or if you'd like to learn more about their industry training, mentorship, shadowing opportunities, make sure to subscribe to their newsletter on nationaltalentacademies.ie. Thank you so much. I'm so delighted that everyone could join us ahead of their premiere at DIF. Is everyone excited?
Yeah.
Yeah, very, yeah.
Oh, so I'm going to call on you guys one by one, and I would like if you introduced yourself and just gave us like a quick log line about your film. And I'm just going to go in order. Claire.
Yes, my name is Clare Monnelly and I'm the director of Babysitter by Aisling O'Mara. Babysitter is a story about a single mom who is attempting in vain to go on a date, but is being kind of stopped at every turn.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And Louise.
Hi, I'm the writer and director of Let Go, which is I keep saying it's a period piece because it's set in 2004, but it's about 2 teenage girls in 2004 Ireland who are obsessed with an Avril Lavigne type character, and this sense of identity shapes their friendship until a real life-changing identity change pulls their friendship apart.
Gorgeous. And Sodiq.
Hi, I'm Sodiq Ajibola Abiola. I am the director and writer of 4C, which is a story about a young black boy that gets invited to a sort of get-together dinner party. And everyone at this dinner party is white, and they're all just interested in his hair. It's a bit surreal, a bit weird, yeah.
Dot.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, without spoilers. Oh, yeah, brilliant. And Edelle.
Hi, I'm Edelle, and I am the director of the short film The Race. It's about a girl, Aaliyah, who returns home to her grandfather, who is in kind of his last hours of life, and she wants to return back to college. So she wants to ask him for the money to go back to college, but everyone else in the family also had the same ideas for their own needs. And turns out, well, I actually won't spoil it. That's it.
And there's an array of characters and some brilliant dynamics there. Okay, so before we go into your process of creating the film and writing the film, I was just wondering if maybe you guys could just chat a little bit about what you liked about the First Credits Scheme. And also, actually, before we get into that, a big shout out to Marisa Roy, whose film The Parting is also screening. And the reason she is not here is because she was on last week's podcast completely by herself. So anyone who wants to kind of get more information about that lovely film, just have a listen back to the last episode in case anyone thought we were forgetting about her fabulous work. But yes, I was wondering, I'll let people kind of come forward for this. So if people kind of tell me a little bit about what their experience was on the scheme and what they liked about it.
Yeah, that's way easier than talking about our films. The National Talent Academy, who run the First Credit Scheme and the Short Film Fund as well. I suppose from my perspective, the First Credit Scheme felt like the only way, or one of the only ways in. As an actor and a writer who was kind of tentatively thinking about directing and knowing what the NTA do and how they provide mentoring and support throughout the whole process of making your first short, it felt like a no-brainer, certainly for me, to have all that backing and all that, and also then the kind of the companionship of my fellow directors who were kind of heading into a similar journey. So we were supported by NTA right throughout the process. So we initially we first all met at a crew call out, where in case, you know, if we didn't have access to whole crews, that they put a call out to the industry, and there was like 150 people there, and we had to get up and all pitch our films, which was a baptism of fire. But it was great. We got to meet each other, we got to bond in terror, and then meet all these incredible crew members who were looking to work at this level. So that was brilliant. And then we all got to select mentors, or at least suggest mentors that we'd like to work with within the industry. I got to work with the incredible Aisling Byrne, who held my hand hard throughout the whole thing. So the level of support that they, like, aside from, yes, they give you your budget, which is obviously integral to making the film, but aside from that, the support and the mentorship was really invaluable. And definitely worth saying as well that alongside the budget that was provided, there was the option of up to €5,000 in an inclusion fund. And we weren't sure if we would qualify for any of those kind of strands of funding, but Eve was quick to point out to us that I think 6 of our main creatives are moms, parents, and the inclusion fund covered childcare, which was an absolute game changer for us. Well, the 3 of us, me, Ash, the writer and actor, and Niamh Crahor, our producer, are all moms. So is our DOP, so is our gaffers. Our gaffer's a dad. Loads of people that we could. It meant that when we were going out to offer work to people as well, and obviously you're working on a small budget, we had the bonus of being able to say, okay, we can only pay you so much, but what we can do is cover your childcare for the shoot. And indeed for our editor, Laura, we were able to cover post for her as well, which was a total game changer. Yeah, just an incredible scheme and a brilliant way into short filmmaking.
I think it's beautiful as well because it links so thematically to your work as well, and it's such a true thing. Yeah, like I'm trying to, you know, working in the industry isn't always the easiest thing because, you know, call times are crazy early before crash times, and it's like, how do you manage it if you don't have that village? And it is so important. I do think that the National Talent Academies are incredible to get that support. And I was just wondering if anyone had anything to add about, you know, what the journey has been like, and maybe what people listening might be interested in getting out of it. Like for me, like as someone who's looking at it, I like making short films. It can be difficult to get them screened, and a lovely DIFF premiere at one of the fabulousest festivals that we have is pretty exciting as well.
I think also what's really great, although it's like a first credit and first film fund, is that there's not like any limit in expectations or what you can ask for. And they're very open from the start. Like it's almost, I was kind of glad that we didn't do the first year, which I'm sure they got on great also, but they kind of encourage you, if there's something that they're not providing, that just to come to them. And I'm sure that we've like received some like add-ons based on what the graduates, I guess you'd call them, asked for last year. But yeah, there was no limit in what you could say, like, hey, we're really struggling with this, or do you guys have any suggestions for kind of a workshop for this? And the other thing is with the mentors, there's no limit on who you can ask for either, which I was really surprised. And we ended up getting Dervla Walsh, who directs Bad Sisters. So she was my mentor. And then we also got Adam Newport, who is a cinematographer on this Apple's The Studio. And like, I don't know many other schemes that, like, when it's of a budget of this size for first credit, that is willing to go to Hollywood to get your mentors. So yeah, I can't credit like Mags and Eve and the rest of them enough for just going above and beyond and not letting you feel like it's your first credit. Or it's going to be your last either, because you've so, you know what I mean? They're like, yeah, you should aim for the stars and we'll try get them. So yeah.
Can I kind of add to that, where I feel like the idea of gatekeeping has totally been removed through this scheme, where, you know, we've all kind of come from different creative backgrounds. Some of us have worked in film and TV before, some of us haven't at all. And you get to kind of enter the room. Like, I feel like there's a really nice kind of camaraderie between all of the writers and directors, whereas I feel in another setting there could be a real idea of kind of competition, this sort of kind of cutthroat idea of only one can survive, which isn't that way at all. And there's been so much support kind of, I feel, kind of between us, but also from NTA, where it's like there's no wrong question. There's no stupid question, and anything that you're concerned about, you don't feel like a pest, which I often feel like a pest in my day-to-day life. But whenever there was something kind of bubbling that could have been a problem or felt like a problem, or I felt like I was out of my depth, I would know that there was kind of a friendly, Mags, Eve, Sean, you can email them, talk to them, like a friend, and I would hope that maybe we are friends. But there are other situations where you kind of feel that you are kind of, dancing for your dinner in a sense, but it really felt like this was just helping everyone achieve their creative goals and everybody wanting the best for everybody else. And that is just not something I've experienced that much outside of this in the creative world.
Oh, that's lovely.
Everyone kind of said almost everything is exactly it. NTA, like the scheme feels open for like all sorts of, I guess, levels. I think a big thing for me was the crew day, like the crew pigeon day, and just the different levels of people's experience, and hopefully like the people I met on that day. I believe, and hopefully we stay good friends and good mates. I think I've made lifelong friends through those. I almost don't know how my movie would have been made without that day, because I remember thinking like, okay, where do I get a gaffer? Like, where do I find these people? And then they were all just there that day, and I was like, okay, where do I get a production designer? Just there. I was like, okay. So for me, thank you NTA guys for that day, saved my life. But yeah, and it wasn't just like a certain level of experience. There was like people just graduated college, and it was great to have them. And it's like there was this different level of experience and different sort of perspectives, which was great. But yeah, that was basically why I wanted to jump in there. Thank you for the crew event day.
Now I'm going to stick with you now, and we're going to ask you about your film. So what's interesting is you have experience then with KinoD, so that like all hands on deck filmmaking, and then come at it from a screen acting perspective as well. So I was just wondering if you can kind of talk to me about, your background, bring that in to what is just a fabulously dark, surreal piece of kind of like comedy that really turns.
Yeah. With the KinoD, because I come from a screen acting background, or just acting background in general, and I wasn't sure where to start with directing or getting behind the camera. And a mate of mine told me about KinoD, and it's like, a weekend, you meet a bunch of people and you just make something over a weekend. I was like, okay, that sounds, why not? Why not just throw myself at it? And it kind of gave me a bit of confidence to be like, okay, I think I can do this. And then again, I heard about the NTA scheme. I was like, okay, why not? There's nothing to lose. And it seemed very like, from when I read it and I heard it, it felt welcoming. They're like, yeah, everyone come. I was like, yeah, I'll come. Why not? And then I went to the sort of like the information day, and you can also pitch if you're looking for a producer, director, writer. Then I decided to pitch my film, which kind of helped me sort of getting used to talking about my film. And that's how I found my producer. Thank you, James Patrick Murphy, my best friend now. That's how I found him, and basically we made it work.
Was it fully formed? So your idea, because it's so strong, or talk to me about, where the idea came from and the development process.
The idea was sort of like, it wasn't fully formed, but I sort of, I had the bones there. It's something that's been in my head for a while. It was one of those, should it be a play? Should it be a film? I'm more into the screen. So like visually, it felt it was a film to me. But yeah, it wasn't fully formed, but it was one of those things where I think I say this all the time, but I wasn't going to make this film because the idea of like, white people touching black people's hair, I was like, oh, that doesn't happen anymore. No one does that. Until there was a day I was in a pub with some mates, and the woman behind the bar, her manager came and just touched her afro. And I stood there like, oh, this still happens. And like, he didn't see anything wrong with it, but obviously she was uncomfortable. And it wasn't until like another colleague came up to him and was like, oh, you can't do that. And I was like, I was just watching this, and she couldn't say anything. And I was like, okay, I guess I will make this film. And then that experience gave me the confidence to be like, yeah, I am going to make this. But yeah, that's basically how it happened.
And tell me about, because I think you've two kind of brilliant characters that play off, and there's like a lovely slow reveal. did you find that during the development process of the scheme? Were you kind of like, how many drafts has the script gone through?
Yeah, a few. And thank you, NTA, for script editors. They also give you script editor guys, which is great. The two Toby and AJ characters, they did go through like a journey in terms of like the script. I'm trying to say how without spoiling it, but yeah, they do go through a journey in the script, and it was definitely with the help of the script editor that I fully honed as much as I could on the sort of relationship between those two guys. Like the idea was there, but and I could never fully figure out how to make it work. And thank you to Maria, who was my script editor, Maria Odufuye, and my shadow script editor, Dolapo, who very much helped me. Yeah, who very much helped me sort of like in like the time we had to really hone in on AJ specifically, which was great.
She's brilliant. She's one of our contributors, and she's fabulous. Yeah. I've read her work.
They're great.
But yeah, I think that's really exciting as well to get to do it. Now, Edelle, you've come from like kind of, and you really kind of go like, look, you had loads of experience across a bunch of different platforms in film and media, and now you get to do your own project. Was that like, talk to me about developing the story for the race and and how your own kind of experience comes into it?
Yeah, so it's written by Gemma Creagh, who, anyone that knows Gemma Creagh, is this unapologetic authenticness about her. And I think if you know her and then watch the film, you're like, oh yeah, this is Gemma's film, despite her being front and center as the lead actress. And it came from, we actually met after DIF last year. Oh no, was it? Anyway, we were at some Screen Ireland event, and we're like, we'll go for a coffee. And she was like, oh, we should do a film together. We talked about a few different film ideas, and then we just had a normal girl chat, and we were, moaning about families. And then we were like talking about some particular story, and I was like, this is the film. And she was like, no. And I was like, no, this is the film. So Gemma went away and wrote it. And I'll be really honest, it was very fully formed from the first draft. Gemma has someone that, like, you read her script, you're like, this dialogue needs no editing. We had a little bit of back and forth. When I say back and forth, like, redrafting in terms of structure, because getting something down to 10 pages is, as we know, somehow harder than 90 pages. Yeah, and then we didn't do much else until about 4 weeks beforehand. And the reason that is my background is in reality TV. So I directed reality TV for a long time in the States. And I guess the benefit of that is that I don't panic when I only get a single take, because that's all I'm used to getting. So I just kind of knew it would be formed in the edit. We had a wish list of actors, people that I've seen on Irish TV, that I was like, could we get someone like this? And once we sent them to our casting director, Sarah Jones, she was like, I think just ask all these people. They luckily all said yes, based on the fact that Gemma had a great script. And then what we did was we workshopped in a rehearsal, because we wanted everyone to feel like they understood their character and they had the autonomy to be able to change the dialogue to fit their mouth, which I think really comes across, because I don't feel like anyone's dialogue feels forced. And so I think it's also cheap time that we're not wasting. And we did a lot of one takes, which my AD was very nervous about, my first. But yeah, it turned out okay.
Yeah. The performances are so natural, and did the actors know you worked like that on set? Did they think they were going to get like loads, and then they were like, what? Oh no.
I think they probably knew from the rehearsal. Like the rehearsal was more just, well, there's a lot of women in my film. We kept the men out of rehearsal because they didn't have a lot of lines, to be honest, or else they were dying on screen. So no need. But the women just come over to the house. We had like tea and biscuits. We all chatted about being women and families. And then we did one single read through. And I was just like, yeah, that's good. And they were like, okay. And then we just like chatted about less the dialogue or the scene work, just like about backstories, so they could help develop their characters. But I think after that, they pretty much knew I was kind of not hands off, but they knew I was not a stickler for, I wasn't going to be like, could you move 1 inch more on your line? I was just like, yeah, whatever feels natural. And I knew I was going to be doing a lot of coverage, so I wasn't going to be a stickler on continuity. So yeah, I think they knew, but they were kind of delighted when I would say, okay, moving on, and they're like, perfect. No second take.
Well, that's it. But I mean, if you know you've gotten it, you know you've gotten it. That's the thing. That's, you know, why waste time when people are there? And there's a lot. You see, there's a lot of kind of emotional arcs in it for such a short film as well. How many days shoot was that?
2 days. Yeah.
Well done.
But that's what you have to do. I also made it very clear to the actors, like, I'll probably never ask you for more than a safety if I feel like something was really off continuity wise. But if the actor was like, can I actually try something different? They all got the chance to be able to say that and were given that take if they needed it, but rarely they took it. But we made that very clear. But yeah, 2 days, so we have to be quick.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting. Okay, we'll get into more of the nitty-gritty of that in the next round of questions. All right, Claire, you've written so many projects and, you know, you've been, you know, front and center in many ways. What was it like stepping behind the camera and taking this role?
Terrifying. Kind of. I suppose I've written loads and acted loads, and in recent years people have been kind of saying to me like, when are you going to start directing your own stuff? And I kept being like, no, I'm no interest in that. And then I kind of dug into why that might be, like why I was so averse to the notion of doing it, and it was just pure terror. It was just pure fear of not feeling qualified and not feeling like I had the requisite skill set because I'm an Irish woman. And I think I was getting in my own way a lot. So, and again, like so often these things happen this way. Like I've a long-standing working relationship with Aisling O'Mara. We've worked together for years. I've been in a play that she wrote, and we worked really closely on that. Like, and the way I got that part in that play was we were in a bar and she was talking about needing an actress, and I offered my services, kind of because I was a few points in and I had the courage to do that, and that went really well. So she rang me one day and mentioned that she really wanted to start writing short films, and she saw the scheme coming up and was like, I'm going to apply for the first credit scheme. And much like the last time, I was like, who are you going to get to direct it? And she's like, I don't know yet. And I was like, what if I did? And that was how it started. And then I made a promise to somebody that I like and wanted to stay my friend, so I had to do it. But the NTA scheme was incredible from that perspective. Just feeling like, as I went along, I realized how transferable so many of the skills that I have are into directing. That's not to say that I knew everything. I didn't at all. But also the benefit that myself and Aisling had were that we have worked on so many sets, and that so many of our pals are extremely talented filmmakers in their own rights. And so the people that we were approaching to work on the film are all excellent, just excellent across the board. Carol Tormey, our DOP, Laura Briggs, our editor, Sala O'Halloran, our costume designer, like every single person who worked on the film was incredible. And my job, I felt like, was to allow everybody to be really, really good, and then just wrangle all of that together in some way. So yeah, it was definitely a baptism of fire. The mentorship from Aisling Byrne in advance was absolutely integral. Like for me, Aisling was the perfect choice because we're pals. So I got to bypass any being afraid to ask stupid questions or trying to impress somebody. We know each other, we know each other's work. So I got to go straight in and ask all the stupid questions. I feel like she's incredibly experienced, and yet by the time we started working together, she just finished making Mary is Missing, her most recent short. So it was all really fresh to her. Like the making of a short, every beat of the process. So we went through it in forensic detail, how she does things, and I got to learn from that and to, you know, take what was useful. So yeah, it was an absolute baptism of fire, but I was just surrounded from start to finish with excellent people, and also I had the gift of Aisling's brilliant script and her excellent, and all our pals are amazing actors. So I didn't have the struggle of casting or anything like that. It was like texting Sarah Morrison saying, you're in my film. And texting Sean Fox and saying, you're in it as well. So we had a lot of legs up in that way. We were very lucky.
And did you like coming out the other end now? Do you have a taste for it? Do you go, yeah, this is, or like, was it a little bit like, oh God, that was a bit traumatizing, but I'll definitely do it again eventually?
Oh, like it was totally traumatizing, but then sure, everything we do is a little bit traumatizing.
Yeah.
I think if you'd asked me the day we submitted the film, I probably would have said, no, I'm never doing that again. But now that it's like childbirth, now that the pain has receded somewhat, I probably will. I feel like it's a thing that I did really enjoy it. I particularly enjoyed being on set with everybody. And I didn't miss being in front of the camera. Like obviously that's where I usually am when I'm on a set. But I really enjoyed getting to work that closely with everybody in a way that as an actor you're slightly removed in that you're very much in your own headspace. The notion of being across the whole thing and having to multitask in that way was really, really enjoyable. And then the most surprising thing to me was how much I learned in post. Obviously, as an actor, I've never been in post before, so I was very much thrown in the deep end, and I learned. So we like from Laura, our editor, working with Leandro as our colorist,
And Ray Gunther,
on our sound mix. Yeah, so many incredible people, and just even the mechanics of how all that goes together. That was just like there are words that I understand now that I didn't know existed. So it was incredible, and I'd love to. I suppose it's that thing of like I've done it now, and I'm really, really proud of what we made. And I think what I want to do now is direct my own writing.
Yes, that was just what I was going to ask. Because like as somebody who, when you hand it away and it comes back, like oftentimes it's so different. Like, that's the one thing, like, especially when it's different when it's other people's material as well, but it's something
and I really felt the weight of that. I felt the weight of that responsibility, like extremely heavily, like making Aisling's film with her. Like I really felt the weight of that, like doing it justice, sending it that first cut to her was terrifying. That she would be happy with it, that she would feel like we'd done her script justice. So in some ways I feel like if I'm working on my own, then it's all me. It's all on me. Yeah, I think that will probably be what I do next.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, it's lovely. It's interesting as well. And I suppose when performance and storytelling is at the heart of it, that's something that you're very naturally adept to do. That those are the skills that you already had been working with professionally. And Louise as well, you've created you've created a whole pop star world. And these two, like that, such a familiar dynamic as somebody who watches, like who was of that era. Tell me about.
Yeah, so I think most people who you don't have to spend much time in my company to realize that I'm a big fan of pop culture. So I suppose music journalist is my main trade. But identity has always been like a big thing that has interested me. Because when I look back at my teen years, I just think baggy trousers, eyeliner, carrying around like a Mark Lanigan CD to parties, hoping someone will let me play it. They never did. I was never allowed to play Mark Lanigan at parties. But the idea of Avril Lavigne or an Avril Lavigne type character being so important for that time, I was inspired partly by, I think it's actually here behind me, a book called Girls, 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 which is about girl fandom. Looking back how girls were removed a lot from kind of pop culture in general, kind of, girls are often diminished as fans, or, girlhood just isn't deemed important in a lot of big things. But, without girls, we wouldn't have had the success of the Beatles, blah, blah, blah. Like we know that whole kind of trajectory. But if you were to bring that kind of back to the 2000s culture, which was just steeped in misogyny, when you look at like American Pie were the big kind of films, and it was all about, the boys and their friendship and their success and, their quests. And it's like, well, where were the girl versions of that? Because the girls were always, the nagging girlfriends or the kind of prudish people, or they were just the sex symbol that was seen as the goal. It was never really about girl friendships. So I liked the idea of, giving girl fandom its place again. And I used Avril Lavigne specifically as the kind of emblem of that, because nobody took her seriously at the time, even though, why would you be taking Blink 182 more seriously than her when they were literally just singing songs about wanking? It's just, I love both acts, but, you have to appreciate both their crafts in equal measure. Avril Lavigne is the musician that made a lot of my female musician friends become like take up guitar lessons or take up drum lessons or form rock bands in their estates when they were growing up. And some of those artists contributed music to the film, which is Avril Reddy, Sir Richardson, Elaine May, and also Joe Furlong, who he's our token man. He's our token straight man who could contribute something to the film. But specifically, when I was a teenager, one of my best friends in school, Carrie, who also did our costume, Carrie Kinahan, I remember the summer between first year and second year school, she came back transformed, because it was the summer that Complicated had been released, and she was wearing a tie over a t-shirt, and she was wearing eyeliner, and her naturally blonde hair was dyed brown. And, she just stood out in a year of girls who were all, wanted to buy like Burberry bags and, little Celtic tiger wags, basically. I don't mind saying that. It's been 20 plus years, but I was just like, oh, you can be different. It was just like this kind of light bulb moment of like, you can choose to be yourself when everybody else is choosing to be a different way. And it was just something so refreshing. And I owe a lot to my friendship with Carrie, particularly when we were a little bit older. When I was 17, I had my foot amputated, and her friendship and our kind of shared bond of identity kind of really got me through what was an incredibly difficult time. And we were like rockers. We used to go to Eamon Doran's every single weekend, and we're always in Temple Bar. But our main kind of identity thing was that we became pirates. And that's exactly as it sounds. Because I had one leg, I was like, I'm a pirate now. So then me and my friends, when we were teenagers, we all became pirates to kind of help me move into this kind of new kind of phase of identity. And that's what was just so important to me, that my friends were there to kind of recognize that. So, but let go, unfortunately, is on the flip side of when you don't necessarily have that friend there to help you kind of ease into this kind of new phase of your life. Because my lead character, Orla, she also has a foot amputation in it. And this time she leans more into the pop punk identity as a life kind of raft. But she doesn't have her friends there to kind of guide her through the process. So it's that idea that if you don't have, people, you could always have pop culture. So that's kind of what Let Go is a little bit about.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And actually, what I'm going to do is, Sadiq, I'll talk to you now a little bit about like the process of filming and casting, but even if we go back and touch on identity as well, because again, without giving too much away, I think yours does it very, very sort of cleverly. And it's very funny and observed, and very like, I was like, that Get Out moment, like where the guy arrives in, I was like, oh my God, it's so good. There's some sort of big themes that are in there, and it's told very, very sharply. Was that something that kind of happened underneath the text and story, or was that always like the focus and everything else was built around it? And then we'll go into casting. Right.
Yeah. A bit of both. Like the main thing was kind of like trying to figure out that question of why do people like touching the hair, and also it kind of evolved into speaking about identity and sort of a thing of like changing yourself to fit in, like a thing of like I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but like code switching. Like it's not the specific sort of main focus of this film, but like it's there. It's like how you sort of change yourself to fit what you assume people think of you, like the whole, the black guy is always the cool black guy in like most films or most things. He's just, he comes in, he's like swagged out or whatever. He listens to the best music. He's just that cool guy. And there's a point even in my life where you feel that role without thinking it. Like you sort of have to be it. And if you're not, you're a bit weird or like a bit different. So identity was definitely sort of a part of this, and it helped to sort of push the main character sort of reason for being here and staying in this place. Like, who is this person when he leaves, and where else can he find people that will take him in? So yeah, so that was definitely a big thing, and it's something I want to see more, and like I love seeing, like no matter like what what you identify, sort of bringing that to the forefront. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, really, because I'm trying to ask it in a way that I don't want to give too much weight. And I presume, like, and just, it is sold out, isn't it? Like, no one can get tickets to this. So people will have to wait until all of these are programmed in a festival near them to go to. And the second they see them programmed, they're going to have to snap them up because they're just really good. For something like this, and for that really dark comedy, and what I really love is how like there are bits and it gets more ridiculous and characters are more ridiculous. And then it kind of turns to becoming a bit sinister. And as an actor, like who has experience sort of being trained in acting, like, are you casting actors based on this? Are you finding that tonal performance of it? Because like it's very distinct and very dry.
Yeah. I think so. Most of the actors in the film are my friends, are people I know. So it kind of helped that like I've seen them do things. I'm like, okay, like they're kind of perfect for this role. And like before they joined, I did speak to them about what the project is, if they're comfortable playing these characters, and everybody was like, yeah, I want to do this. And they sort of it felt almost like I cheated because they kind of got it immediately. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I don't have to like do too much because they got what we're going for. And I tried my best to sort of allow the actors to kind of bring their own weirdness into it. Like some of the characters was not originally how I thought them out. And then they brought their own. I was like, okay, this is weird. And I love it. Like I love like just the weirdness they brought to it. And so yeah, it was just basically allowing the actors to sort of bring what they can to the characters and sort of have fun with it. Like I didn't really have like a directing style at the time, so I was just like, guys, let's have fun. Let's if it doesn't sound right, don't say. If you want to do this, do that. It kind of helped for the whole project because the weirder they got, the better it kind of felt for me. And like obviously there were parts where we'd had to sort of like tone it down just to make it make sense in like a sort of journey. But yeah. Yeah.
Had you experienced editing before? So something like that pacing and that beat is so important. And like even the punchlines, and there's certain moments that you're like, oh, that's very funny. Like we're again, this is a mystery now, but it's like, have everyone seen each other's films? No. Oh my God. So it's so exciting. So, okay. Next Friday, you'll get to see it. Okay, Grant.
Yeah.
And have you read each other's scripts, I presume, because you've been on the same thing? Oh, okay.
I think we read like a bit, but I'm not sure how much has changed since we did like the first reading very early on, but it might have changed since then.
Yeah, Sodiq and I are the only writer-directors, so we had crossover workshops where we would have been reading each other's scripts.
Yes.
For kind of like peer-to-peer review. So we've read your scripts.
Yes.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, well that makes it more interesting. That okay, if in terms of then you coming out the other end of it, like I mean, it's such a big process. I think it was Claire that said, baptism of fire completely in terms of knowing your first film. What is it? Like what were the bits that kind of surprised you, that you learned a lot, that
the whole thing. No, it was how do I explain? It was definitely an experience, which I loved at the moment. When I was doing the thing, I don't know if I loved so much, but when I sort of woke up the next day, I was like, oh wow, we made a movie. I think the thing that surprised me the most definitely is sort of the post process, I guess. Sort of getting everything to blend well together in terms of like sound and music, the color, the editing, because you always have like an idea of like, I think I want it to look like this or sound like this, and then you do it, and it's like, oh, I was wrong. So it was definitely the post process and sort of going through, how do I explain? Sorry, going through sort of the iterations of each cut. And I remember, I think Derek Ngilchukwu was my mentor, was like, don't be surprised if that first cut or the first edit isn't good. And I was like, okay, I told myself that and I'm still surprised. I was like, ugh, what is this? But yeah, it was definitely the editing process. Like I've been through edits process before, but it was just sort of when it's your film and when you've had an idea of how you wanted it to look and feel and having to sort of come to terms with things can change. Especially post-process, for me.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. And if you could give yourself sort of one lesson looking back at the start of it, you know, like what would your advice be to yourself?
Oh, deep breaths. I think definitely sort of being okay with sort of speaking your mind, because there would be times where I felt like maybe I was a bit too nervous to be like, okay, I think because I would be with my editor, Stephen Staunton, and there'll be times where I'll be like, am I bothering him too much, but ask him to keep cutting stuff or like switching? But I was like, no, I should just say it because we're trying to make a good movie. And I would tell him that, and he'd be like, yes, we're here to make a good movie. Whatever you need, tell me. And I think that's a big thing, just not being afraid to be like, okay, this is not working. Why isn't this working? And just speaking more to like my, I guess, creative partners. I guess talking to my producer a lot more, and just definitely not being afraid to, if something doesn't feel right, say it, and trying to figure out a way to make it feel. It might not be exactly what I wanted, but as long as it feels good, it feels the right way. Just taking my time with it. Like really sitting down and realizing that like it takes time, and if I think, because like I feel like if I rush it, it's not, because again I change my mind a lot, so sometimes I'll be sitting, so I'm like, oh, no, that's not it. So having that time really helps.
Oh, brilliant. Yes. And I'd post is as well, when you're not familiar with it, it is just so much can change and it can do so much and it can fix so much. But then, you know, you're also limited to what you've gotten. So it is one of those things, like if you have experience editing, you can kind of figure it out. But even still, like, you know, it's so different at the hands of other people. And Edelle, so you've
Sorry, I just want to say, I also found out how important coverage is, guys. Coverage, very important.
Did you have to go back and do any like extra?
We didn't have like budget or time, but like we made it work. But yeah, coverage is very, very, very important, and I found out the hard way.
But it looks great. you wouldn't get that so much in it. Edelle, I was just wondering as well, were there any bits, so you've come from that moment of, you know, working on sets, the franticness, like that probably isn't too different, but were there any beats that maybe surprised you? Was there anything, and like even would you have been kind of working closely in edits in that scope? Like was there, you know, anything that was a kind of shock to you, or is something like this a good way to bring all your skills together?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, because we all did a course together, and like when this question came up, I was like, think of something, because you don't want to seem like it all went smoothly. I think like next year I'll be 20 years working in film and TV, so like I've kind of dabbled and been in a lot of different departments and rooms, but I think the thing that shocked me the most is how quickly 15K goes. It just disappeared. I guess if I had, and this is more of a good thing, is that I think because I've produced for a lot of years also, naturally, if I do direct anything, whether it be like music videos, commercials, I always double dip in the roles, in the sense that like I'd always be included in everything. And I think what I learned on this one was the beauty of having a really, really strong producer and someone who cares about creative and allowing you to have that space. Because Lorcan O'Hanlon, who is my producer, I mean, as far as I was concerned, this was the smoothest running production to ever hit this island. I'm sure it wasn't. But like Lorcan didn't let me know that. And it was the first time I've ever done something where I didn't feel split my time, and I was able to sit in the creative and just think about shots. And like, there's been a lot of times where that's been like a night before thing because I've been putting out fires, double dipping. So I think, yeah, I learned the value of having a really good producer and making sure you don't let them go and not fight with them because you'll want them on your next one. But yeah, that and just adapting on set. Like, I know everyone else here knows this, but there's a character in mine that wasn't meant to be in mine. He was actually a chaperone, but he of the 1-year-old, but he actually just was in a back of a scene, and because we shot out of order, and then the 1-year-old had to be cut because she was fed up, and that's fine. We then had to integrate this chaperone into the scene work and the rest of the film, which I think if I was very anal about how I'd seen the film, wouldn't have been as easy on the day, but we had 5 minutes to be like, okay, how do we work him in and let's make him feel more natural. So yeah, I think I just learned the beauty of going with the flow and not being like, everything has to be perfect. It would all work out. So yeah.
And what was the post process like? Because there's a lot of things happening as well with that. There's like for something that's shot over such a short space of time, there's a lot of characters and a lot of arcs and a lot of stories to get across.
Yeah, the post process, I had Annie Walsh as my editor, who we've worked together before. And I think the great thing about Annie is she's really story orientated. So our first cut actually came back, and I watched a lot of first cuts, from shorts to like $30 million films. So I know the angst that like just hits your stomach when you get a first cut and you're like, this was a waste of millions of euros. But the first cut came back and I was like, okay, I see the potential, but there was definitely issues, and how you see the film wasn't how Gemma wrote it. So we actually moved a lot of things around and we lost a scene, and that was kind of nervy because you've sat with the story for so long, and then you're conscious that you don't have much time in post and this person's being paid a very low rate, and then you're like, could we try this? It definitely, I'm not sure it won't work, but just yeah, not being like what Sadiq said, like not being anxious to be like, look, we have to try something else, it's not working. And people want their work to be good too. That's a representation of them as an editor, and never once have I had someone say, no, it's not worth it. People always want it to be better, and in the end it worked out. The other thing I think I learned was just make sure you have your money for post. You don't want to be ringing your friends being like, you're gonna have to color this for me, because the budget is at zero. And yeah, luckily our friend happens to be a very great colorist, but it's just not something you ever want to have to do, is ask someone to do something for little than what they're worth, even if it's the very basics. So yeah, learned just to don't eat into your post budget and think we'll fix that later. You won't fix it in post, and you certainly won't fix it with no budget. So yeah.
Oh God, that's a warning. Oh, and Louise, what about yourself? So it's quite a kind of emotional journey, and your cast is they're young. Like, what was your shooting process like? Was there anything that kind of cropped up that you had to deal with, or that surprised you, or that you learned about yourself as a creative or a filmmaker or a writer?
Yeah, so all of our actors are playing 16-year-olds, and I think the max age, and this might even be pushing it, is 25. Like, they could be 21. Like they were young, incredible. So such incredible actors brought so much to all of their characters, no matter how much screen time they had. But it was kind of interesting because there would be like a 20-year gap between me and them. And it was kind of like, it was an interesting case of generational studies because our lead characters were meant to smoke and meant to drink in the film. And we learned at one point that we were spending too much time teaching one person how to smoke, that we were like, okay, we have to we have to cut this out. The cigarettes have to go. The cigarettes have to go, because they don't smoke, and they're not as bold as we were, and like that's so true. They're not as bold as we were 20 years ago. Um, but kind of again in that idea of when we had to be like, cut the cigarettes. I had to be the one that had to be like, the cigarette has to go. And I had to kind of call it in the moment and have that confidence to be like, okay, no more smoking, guys. And the same with the drinking as well. Some of our actors are drinking, but this whole idea of drinking from a naggin and kind of spitting it out, I was like, oh, that's an experience these people don't have either. So that was just like a lesson in like, okay, the culture has changed. But there were kind of, for a lot of the hard hitting emotional shots, which was just between kind of the two girls, we were very lucky that our first day of shooting was just the two girls from start to end. So their tough scenes where they've fallen out, and there was the scenes where they're great friends and they're doing each other's makeup. So that was a real bonding day for our two leads, who were played by Pollyanna Hope and Connie Doherty. And that was amazing because that set us up for the rest of the weekend, where they had this bond before they met, before they were acting with the other actors. So you could tell that they had a history, even though it was only, a day extra than everybody else. But other than that, our biggest problem with shooting was the weather, because a lot of our scenes are outdoors and the weather changed constantly. We were shooting in Donegal, in Moville in Donegal. And one of the days, this was September, hailstones like came trotting down from the sky. And then minutes later, it was the brightest day you could ever imagine. So a lot of waiting around was because we had to kind of match the light that was happening. And there was one day where like, it's too sunny. It's simply too sunny, which is such a good complaint. But there was just a lot of standing around to make sure that we had some decent cloud cover. So in future, I'd probably write less outdoor scenes for that alone.
Or shoot somewhere like the Canaries or something that you're guaranteed to get